bro, just admit it. Like, just admit it. Do you want to promote your podcast? At least have some transparency with your partner on it.
Welcome back to Behind the Edit, your go-to podcast for unpacking the actual reality behind reality TV. I'm Lachlan Guertin.
And I'm Tahlia Pritchard, and today we're joined by Tannie Cook in a very exciting episode.
Tannie is obviously from last year's season of MAFS. She has a lot to say about Intimacy Week. She has a lot to say about her breakup with Ollie, which was pretty recent. She also has some interesting insights into filming things like the commitment ceremony, diary cams, how the producers get their on-camera fights in the apartments, which I think is very interesting.
She also referenced this season a little bit too, and some behind-the-scenes tea that she found out last year when they were filming, which was very, very interesting to hear.
Yes, she definitely has a lot to say, but I want to hear your thoughts on Intimacy Week so far. It's your favorite week, right?
It was my favorite week.
What happened?
Didn't like it this week. So every season I look forward to it, and I kind of like to see the challenges. I like to see people just like let go and be horny.
Fair.
And this Intimacy Week, everyone was just fighting, and it just gave me no hope, okay? Because deep down, I do love a love story. Yep. And I know we don't watch MAFS for the love story, but somewhere in it, I like to see all the like elements of a couple coming together. No pun intended. They get their little tasks to do. It's fun to watch. It should be fun to watch. But this year, everyone just seemed really, really tense and not in a good way.
There was a standout couple for me, though. I'm going to give my thumbs up of the week to Richard and Andrea.
Yes.
They're definitely the strongest couple so far. And if you tune into our bonus episode with psychic medium Alison Maiden, she had some very interesting predictions about Richard and Andrea.
Yeah, she did. It was great to hear. Also, I kind of like that the oldest couple on the show is also the most kind of sexually active and romantic. It breaks the stereotype of older couples just being a bit boring to watch or whatever it may be.
Totally.
Whereas like the younger ones and people like Jack, who have talked such a big game, he can't even like be on the bed for 2 minutes having a makeout session with his wife.
With his shoes on.
With his shoes on. He also, bro got off that bed so fast. I was like, where are you going? Why are you wearing a beanie with shorts and your shoes? And like, just commit to the bit. You talk such a big game. What are you doing?
What did you like about Intimacy Week? What is your thumbs up?
Yeah, I would just be here all morning talking about my thumbs down for Intimacy Week. Okay, my thumbs up for Intimacy Week was not so much like any of the tasks or the couples in general, but I really liked Lucinda and Tori because Timothy was quite difficult this week watching on the show. I really liked how they kind of talked to him when he was being quite abrasive. Like they didn't match his energy, they didn't yell at him, they didn't stoop to his level, but they just talked really calmly and coolly to him, almost like they were parenting a child.
Yeah.
And I kind of like to see that on the show because I think so many reality shows can paint women to be really dramatic in fights, as we maybe even saw with Sarah. But seeing that kind of side of Lucinda and Tori at the dinner party just not matching his energy, I could really respect that.
I think it was an interesting point from Lucinda as well, that just because Timothy might not be sexually attracted to Lucinda right now, everyone can assume that he's not into her. But why are we assuming that she's automatically into him as well and she really wants this relationship? She made a good point that she gets a say.
It is such a good point because she's doing a lot of heavy emotional lifting right now with him. And she's great and she's really patient, but it's actually not her job to kind of help him on this journey. Like she's meant to be there as his wife. Sure, they're meant to go through these tasks together, but she doesn't need to do the mental and emotional work to get him to a spot where everyone thinks he should be. So, of course, that's probably not that attractive when you're dating someone.
I totally get that. I think I'm going to have to give my thumbs down of the week as well. Natalie and Collins.
Oh, yeah.
We get into that a lot with Tannie, but I also spoke with Natalie. We're going to talk about that at the end of the episode, but she goes into why she actually left the show, which I think is very interesting.
I'm excited to hear that. It does remind me of one more thumbs up, though, I did want to say before we jump into the interview with Tannie. Colin's line when he says, it's like it's mind made up at first sight instead of married at first sight. That was my favorite line of all week.
Thumbs up of the season so far, I'd say.
Maybe of the whole series.
There is a lot that we need to get into, so here's our chat with Tannie Cook. Welcome, Tannie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We have so much to unpack with you, but you've got a weekly recap column with Yahoo. You've got your weekly podcast. You're now on Behind the Edit. What are your general thoughts on season 11 so far?
It's been good. I feel like it's like mixed for me. Like I find it entertaining, then I'm like, it's a little bit boring at times, but overall I'm enjoying it. I feel like each person's kind of brought a little bit of something. So I'm like, it's good so far. It's only 2-3 weeks in, so it can really either go insane from here or just mellow out. But I feel like it's going to be drama.
So far, so good.
Is it hard for you to watch after recently going through a breakup, obviously with your MAFS husband? Is it triggering in any sort of way?
It kind of was like when I was watching like the weddings and I was like, oh, this is kind of sad. And then I'm like, oh, I hope these people work out, because you just go through all the motions. And when we were shown the like confession week, how they had the little, don't know why they're putting cameos of us in the show.
Yeah, the flashbacks.
I was like, that's nice. Great. Didn't need to see that, but great.
Yeah, because I guess like most people when you break up, you kind of just are able to separate.
Totally.
Like not worry about the other person, but then you're seeing.
Yeah. Because I don't know
again.
if I'd want to watch it back again, because it would just be like, oh, this is a bit depresso.
Yeah, for sure.
There is a lot that we have to get through with Intimacy Week.
Yes.
But there was one moment that I want to unpack with you. They showed at the start of Monday night's episode that Sarah organised a girls' night to have some of the girls over to unpack what went down at the commitment ceremony. That was something we've never seen before.
So I have some thoughts on this. So I don't know if I believe it, because logistically, you're finishing those commitment ceremonies, I want to say on average, probably the shortest amount of time, 1 a.m., maybe 2 a.m. Every time we would go home, no producers would come with us. You'd get sent in the car and you go straight to your room. You're de-mic'd, everything. So I don't understand how that would have happened, because one, it would be so early in the morning. All the producers, all the camera guys go home and they've just shot for like 12 hours before. I don't know if I believe that was straight after, because it would be in the AMs in the morning. Let's say you'd have to have producers there. You'd have to have the camera audio guys there. And then you're obviously not allowed to socialize off camera or with each other. So that would have been a setup chat by the producers and coordinated, got the girls' mics on, put them in the room. So I'm just confused if that actually happened on that specific night or not, because then you watch in the other episodes, they're wearing the same outfits and the hoodies and stuff. So I was like, this is not really matching up to me. Like, unless they're repeating the outfits, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem realistic, because those would finish like later than the dinner parties and you'd go straight to bed. So they looked alive. I was like, they just sat through 12 hours of commitment ceremony. I don't think so.
Yeah.
So I don't really buy that.
We also only saw them talking negatively about Collins. Like, it felt like a weird production tactic.
Like, wouldn't you
setup.
brought up Sarah and her being grilled, or like this, like Jack being grilled, and then they want to talk about Collins?
Yeah, absolutely. I also thought, because obviously in the later episode we see Tim's upset with Sarah because she's too hungover to go on their date.
Yes.
After being with the girls. And I was like, was this not just... If they're all drinking like champagne or whatever together, maybe that was actually following later that date. Yeah.
Yeah.
The timeline is weird either way, but that was the thought when I was watching that. I was like, if she's hungover, she said she was with the girls, and knowing what you guys have said before too about not really being able to hunt out heaps off camera to not ruin storylines and stuff.
Yeah.
Was that all tied in together?
Yeah, I feel like the editing's probably mismatched, because I can't imagine that they would have given new camera guys, or it just would be, in terms of logistically of like the hours, I just can't imagine that.
I've got a general question about filming those kind of set up conversations in the apartments, in the hotel suites. We see Lucinda and Timothy kind of unpacking the commitment ceremony together. When you're living together with your partner, I'm assuming you're just going about your day.
Yeah.
Do the producers just walk in and say, okay, now start fighting, now start talking about this? Or how does that work?
Well, so the rule was, if you start fighting, you have to pull out your diary cam and film it. Absolutely not happening. Absolutely not happening. So anytime you'd have like some sort of heated discussion or anything important, you'd pull out your diary cam. So obviously we saw Ellie pull out and did her little thing. You'd have to do that, but not many people did that.
That is so funny. I'm just thinking like mid-argument, you're like,
No,
like
fully.
going, babe.
It's like a body
fully.
cam
And you
or
have to be like,
something.
I'm filming this. Like, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Obviously not going to happen. But usually I feel like, especially for the commitment ceremony, obviously you're going to go home, no cameras there. You're going to have a little bit of a debrief. Then in the morning, you kind of have to do it again. So they'll be like, because when they're walking in the room, they have to mic you up. So they have to mic you up, then walk in. So it's not this like natural. The only time they really barged in the room was like retreat where we weren't mic'd up. That was the only time they really came in with no notice. Any other time you kind of get a bit of a pre-warning.
Okay.
So I feel like that's why you see them, there's like tense. They've obviously had a discussion off camera and then things are tense and then they try and bring the cameras in. But most of the time it doesn't get caught on the camera.
It's
Interesting.
almost like you get two opportunities then to have that argument. Because I'm imagining if something happens, you're in the car home together and you've argued, for
Totally.
example, then the next day you're reliving it.
You got to discuss it
I
again.
would be like, oh, I've thought of heaps.
I got a
I'm
good
bad at
comeback.
arguing in
yeah,
the
I got a
moment.
good comeback. Yeah,
So, like
yeah.
the next day I'd be like, hold on a sec, actually.
Yeah, no, totally. So you would, have to then have the conversation,
How annoying.
which is so annoying. Yeah.
You mentioned Ellie's diary cam. That leads us into our first clip. We just want to
Okay.
play what she kind of said about Ben and get your thoughts on
Sure.
that.
Ben and I decided to go out for dinner tonight. We were chatting about like our expectations of after the show, and and here I am like bleeding on about hoping for the best and wanting a relationship, blah blah blah. And then he asked me, do I think that he's here for the right reasons, or is he here trying to promote a podcast? And I was like, yeah, I believe that you're here for the right reasons. And then he actually mocked me and he said, oh, you're here for the right
That pissed
reasons. And
me
it was really
off.
high pitched, and honestly that struck a nerve and it made me feel really stupid. And I just thought, well, you're just belittling me.
Yeah. Because I can just imagine it. And I was just living for her cousin, like grilling him. I just found that hilarious. I was like, bro, just admit it. Like, just admit it. Do you want to promote your podcast? At least have some transparency with your partner on it.
They're definitely
You're going
promoting
on
the podcast.
TV. Like, I just don't, I think there's an element of signing up for MAFS and like the experience of it. Obviously, like, absolutely you're going there to find love, right? But I think it would be really naive to be like, you wouldn't have a think of any other opportunities that may come from it, or to be naive going to it like nothing, you're not going to get this exposure in the public eye. I think that's also naive to look at it. So I don't know how I feel, because I obviously don't buy him being like, I'm here for the right reasons. I feel like you don't say that if you are there for the right reasons. I don't know. I feel like if you bang on about it, it's just like, okay, why are you making a point of it?
Yeah.
And I feel like you can just tell. You can just tell what people's vibe are. Like, I don't know, like she seems so genuine and lovely. I really, really like her.
Yeah.
I love her energy. I think she's so sweet. Even when they were doing like the challenge about like kids and stuff, he does not want kids. You either do or you don't. I feel like if you're 39 is he?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
There's
Nah.
a bit of like male privilege there
Yeah,
too,
I'm sorry.
Because he doesn't have like the
Absolutely not.
ticking time clock or whatever they
Yeah.
want to call it. So he's just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I just don't. I'm like, nah. Like, I feel like, especially at that age, like, you kind of got to know, like, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, at 39 for sure.
and he's just being a bit wishy-washy with his answers and then, like, patronizing her, mocking her. I hate being mocked. That would piss me off. So, like, seeing that, I was like, nah, hate that for her.
I do think it's interesting. Obviously, we can agree that you go on MAFS not solely 100% with a purpose to find love. Like it's a TV show when it
Yeah.
comes down to it. So you want some element of fame that comes with it. Everyone wants that. That's natural.
Yeah.
Her saying that Ben is on there for the wrong reasons to promote his podcast, which has been promoted so many times.
I haven't heard it. I want to listen
I think
to it
I want to
now.
listen now.
Honestly, I will.
But I do think it's kind of ironic that she's saying he's not there for the right reasons. And now after the show, she's organizing paparazzi shoots.
Well, here's the thing. I found that when people would also bang on about you're not here for the right reasons, you're not like, it's like, yeah, but what do you mean by that? Because all of you sign up to go on TV. Like, I don't think any regular Joe Blow person would ever go on TV if they didn't think, wow, I'm going on TV. What could come
Yeah.
from this, right? I feel like that is just, and I hate the public sentiment around this, because it's just, you want normal people, but normal people don't want to go on TV, babes. They don't.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. Or then you have someone like Colin's like, maybe shouldn't be on TV.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like,
that's fair.
So I just think it's like, what is it going to be? Because you want entertainment, but that takes a type of character that you want to see on TV. Because if people are just going to be boring and stuff, people don't want to watch that. It's not going to get the views. It's not going to get that kind of drama that people want to see and why they watch MAFS. They actually don't watch it for the love stories.
Yeah.
And that, like, I hate to say it, but they really don't. They don't care about that, right? So yeah, that whole here for the right reasons conversation is just so tricky, because I agree with, maybe he's not really here for the right reasons. I feel like he's not that into her, and she's stunning. Like, she is just like divine, and he is being really, weird. Like, he's just being so weird and giving her these like stupid answers. And I'm just like, okay. But yeah, and then seeing as of late the stuff that's come out with the like pap shots and then all of that, it's like, well, you're kind of doing that too, which is fine.
Yeah.
No shade to that. Like,
Totally.
do it. But I don't think we then can be judging people going on to promote a podcast. Coming from someone who feels attacked because I have a podcast.
Well, let's take a quick break, and then I've got a clip to show you involving Jonno and his thoughts on Ellie. We'll see. So there's a big scandal that we have to unpack, address the elephant in the room. We have 2 couples this season, Ellie and Ben, and Jonno and Lauren. Yahoo last week...
Drama!
Last week, Yahoo published photos of Ellie and Jonno attending Ellie's work Christmas party.
Tea.
After that, it was basically confirmed that they are now in a romantic relationship. Mm-hmm. The timeline, we will have to watch the show to unfold. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that they are now together, so they are not with the people that they were matched with on the show. Now that we know that, I want to play you a clip of Jonno talking about Ellie during Intimacy Week.
Ellie is a lovely, beautiful, smiling, happy, and very intelligent woman. And he danced around the subject of wanting kids. Again, it does make you question his motives for being here. And it's a bit ick. So I don't buy Ben at all. I just go, no.
Love Jonno. Like, he's just... If he says lovely one more time.
Oh, I know. But he found some more adjectives in there.
He
like,
did.
So
He
I was like, he must really
that was
like
the
her.
most he used to explain someone. So you know what? He obviously really likes her.
That's what I thought too.
But like, I feel like he's said such nice things about her. Obviously, we might not have been shown it, but what has Ben said anywhere nice about Ellie, right? Like, I feel like
100%.
you don't even think he even likes her.
That's fair.
And like, it's just, I don't know what he's bringing to the table that's so amazing. And she's like, she's gorgeous. She's so like, I don't know. I really like her. I feel like she seems such like a sweet, genuine person, and he's just like not really giving anything, you know?
Do you think that the producers purposely included this clip as like a
Well,
teaser?
that's what I'm thinking. Like, do you reckon this is like setting up
Yeah.
something? But this is what I'm interested about, because obviously we did see the leaked photos of them hot, walking out of the beach, making out, cute. It's funny seeing the difference between the support of them versus like maybe other couples in the past that have cheated.
Yeah.
And I always find that really interesting. And I wonder what the element is that lets people be as supportive of it versus them not supportive of it. Because obviously we saw Carolina and Daniel, who arguably didn't really cheat in the experiment in terms of Carolina didn't sleep or anything. We haven't seen Ben and Ellie yet, but like objectively looking on the outside, nothing happened between her and Dion. And then obviously this whole cheating scandal with Daniel happened. Obviously, they didn't handle it the right way. I'm not supporting it at all. But then the hate that they got. And then we've seen other couples get together after the fact and the same energy of being supportive. I just wonder what the element is that people support it versus they don't support it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because
Don't you
even
think?
for context now, all we know is that Jonno and Ellie would have met at one dinner party, right? So we don't actually even know. Well,
What's
we would
happened.
assume that that's the only time they've ever met, that he shouldn't actually know all these like qualities about her whatsoever. Apart from being like a girl he met at one dinner party.
True, actually.
So are
Because
they
they've
already
only had the
talking?
one dinner party and commitment
Yeah.
ceremony. So he wouldn't have engaged with her in any
You would
other
think,
way.
anyway.
I spoke to Ben about this. I
Okay.
went straight to the source.
What has he got for
said
us?
that he was always suspicious that something was going on between Jonno and Ellie during filming. But he never
Okay.
found out that they were together until the reunion. Apparently they walk hand in hand together to the reunion.
No, stop it.
So I would say the comparison is less Daniel and Carolina and maybe more Duncan and Evelyn.
Yeah.
If they got together after they had both broken up with their partners,
Or big
Maybe-
flashback, Troy and Carly.
true. That is a
From,
big
I can't even
flashback.
remember what season it was.
From
It was like
season
2018
5,
or
yeah.
something.
But
True.
maybe it's like that.
But that sounds dramatic. Like,
It does
is
sound
that...
dramatic.
But then is that going to be backed up? Like, were they actually in contact during? What's the crossover?
I think that's what we're going to
That's what we need to find
explore.
out.
Ben did say he feels like Ellie emotionally cheated on him. So nothing physical,
Okay.
but something was going on. I hope we see what unfolds
I
because
hope we
it seems like there's a
do.
lot.
Yeah. Because it's interesting seeing. I know I hate the spoilers because it's just like I want to see it I want to see it play out. Then give me little spoilers towards the end. But like 2 weeks in and we're getting spoilers is so annoying. But I hope there's like the content, like the gaps are filled with why.
I hope so too, because I feel very conflicted about it. Because I
Me
see
too.
like Jonno and Ellie, I'm like, oh, they do seem like a great couple.
Totally.
But we already know too that they have both been intimate with their partners. Like we learned that in Intimacy Week or the commitment ceremonies or whatever. So they have engaged in like romantic relationships.
Totally.
So it isn't, like you're saying, it's not like Carolina and Dion who didn't have that intimate
with their
nature to
partners.
relationship.
Yeah.
So, but on one hand, I'm like, oh yeah, stunning couple. Love
But it's
this for
also the
them.
way it's edited, right? Because that when you saw that Carolina and Daniel moment was like, that's up. Like it was like the drama of it was like the making out, like so bad. But then let's see if this plays out in that kind of scandalous way, or if it'll be played out more of, I don't know, kind of brushed over a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
know?
And then it will be interesting to see if MAFS try and sell them as a success story from the experiment.
Totally. Very curious.
So we saw Natalie and Collins leave this week. I honestly thought they were going to leave at the commitment ceremony. So,
fair.
I mean, it didn't take that much longer. But we want to play you the clip of one of their kind of final conversations and get your thoughts on it.
Tell me times that we've been together apart from the wedding day that's made you happy.
Oh, my God. Every moment I see you, I am happy because that's what I'm here for. That's why I put stay.
This feels like an Oscars performance. I'm sorry. I can't listen to you without
not an
hearing
Oscars-worthy, doll.
orchestra.
Okay, you're questioning now who I am as a person.
Yes. I cannot communicate with someone who talks to me like we're on the set of Neighbours or Home and Away.
Oh, Nat. This is Married at First Sight. I feel like you've just done Mind Made Up at First Sight.
What?
Iconic line, to be fair.
Iconic line. Also, I get so sus because when you see like, I don't believe the conversation unless I see the words out of their mouth with the shot on them, because
That's fair.
the jumping between of that is just like, what? And then he's like, like he's so stressful. He's so stressful.
So do you think, for Collins, do you think it's the way he is it bad acting, or is it a weird edit and we're just not seeing the full story?
I think if it's not acting, I think he should just say that he was an actor. He was a paid actor and that was the role that he was hired to pay for, because if not, I'm just really confused with how he thought he would have looked doing and saying those things, because it's really like, but I'm trying to look at it as I think he's just really nervous and like the laughing, the uncomfortable, the head movements, like he's obviously really uncomfortable in the whole time. So that makes me sad for him, because he's out of his comfort zone completely. It's not a fun environment. You're not getting along with your wife and you're making her uncomfortable, and it's just like, it's a disaster.
Do we think then that she gave him enough time to kind of let those walls down? I mean, they've been in this for 2 weeks. Of course, he's still getting used to the cameras and maybe he wants to say the right thing.
True.
Do you think she ended things too early?
I mean, yes and no. Like, it just, even from the honeymoon, like they just did not vibe. I feel like they had a really beautiful wedding and that was cute. But usually the wedding is like a kind of like the funnest time, the like most like fun moment of the whole experiment. And then you kind of see, you know, the next day, because I did appreciate him going to her and having that conversation, being like, look, I'm not there yet, I'm trying. He did vocalize that, and I do respect that, because I feel like it's better than pushing yourself or, you know, pretending you're into it when you're not. So I think that there is props to that for him having that conversation up front, but then I don't think he ever got through that. And I think the filming, the cameras made him uncomfortable, and it is super uncomfortable. Like, you're getting to know someone in front of a camera, and it obviously doesn't seem like they have that connection off camera, because they're not obviously getting along, because there is that time in between that you can connect, but they're not even staying in the same apartment. I doubt they're messaging or even trying separately.
No.
I feel like they're just engaging on camera, and that is just like so obvious seeing that.
Yeah, I did wonder too, because he seemed so in his head, even though people are saying he's performing and doing whatever. But if they are only engaging when they're on camera, I think he must be so wary of trying to say the right thing.
Totally.
Too. And it's coming out completely
I know.
badly. But even, I guess, during the photo ranking task and all that kind of stuff too.
Oh, I know.
It's like, I think maybe in his head he's so aware of, like, he doesn't want to be portrayed badly, and he's so nervous. And he, unfortunately, he still is being portrayed in not a great way.
Because it's always like the little music they put underneath, like the clown type music. It's just like, They could have put like really beautiful music with that and like didn't edit him to be so jumpy and it probably wouldn't have looked the way it looked.
Totally.
But yeah, because I just feel like you're not getting the full picture of him, because it's like, do you actually believe she's like number one, or do you believe something like we don't know, like who is he? Like we don't really get to know who he is, because it feels like he's so self-conscious about how he's looking on camera. I don't think we'll ever get to see who he actually is, because he's so freaked out by the whole thing, which is so fair enough.
I think at the commitment ceremony as well, he was obviously asking for help.
He was popping off at John.
Which I think was kind of valid. Like you're there
so
with
valid.
the experts, you want their advice. And I think it was kind of a good point that maybe he just doesn't know how to build a relationship with someone who is grieving.
He hasn't had a girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, that as well.
He hasn't had a girlfriend. And obviously that is a good point as well, because then there's that layer of her grieving and her, she's like, I could never go through what I went through in that MAFS experiment, having gone through a crazy traumatic life experience like that. Absolutely not. So it's a big respect to these people that have lost people in their lives and they've gone and done this, because I can't imagine how intense that would be. But yeah, there's that layer of it as well. And she's probably hurting, and then she's not having a good time with him. It's like it's not going to be fun for anyone, really.
We see the women kind of like putting in all this effort and doing some of the heavy lifting here. Do you think people like Lucinda, Natalie should get a redo if their partners are not giving much this early on in the season?
I always think that. Like, I'm like, bring back Sandy. Bring back Sandy. Give her a redo. I feel like I look at, guys like Collins and Timothy. I'm like, look, like, I think you would really benefit from going to therapy and really unpacking a lot of those, insecurity wounds or, whatever you're processing, because it's coming out in a really negative, toxic way to your partner.
Yeah.
And that is not something they can help with. So I feel like unless you're going to work on that yourself, they won't be able to help you, because then that's the one barrier already just to get you there. And yeah, it's hard, because you look and these women seem like they know what they want. They're very clear in their head about their life and, who they are in a partner, what they want to bring. And these guys just aren't. And then it's just clashing a little bit. And then they're also not communicating in the best way, because then you're seeing that with Lucinda and Timothy, and she is just the best communicator, right? Like even a bit too much. And he is just awful to her. Like she is doing everything in that, and he's just like being just nasty, I think.
We didn't see Natalie and Collins do the Intimacy Week tasks. They left
would love to see that.
right before Intimacy Week started. Talking about the tasks though, there were some new additions this year. What did you and Ollie do in your season?
So we definitely didn't do the genital cupping.
That was a lot.
Is horrific. They did do that in our season, but I don't think any of them were showed.
No.
Yeah, Sandy and Dan had that.
Why would they pick Sandy and Dan?
I know. And a couple other people had, I feel like maybe Alyssa and Duncan had that as well.
Wow.
But they didn't show that. So interesting, because that was definitely a task. And I was like, thank I didn't get that one. But we had the hug, the 3-minute hug. And then we didn't have the make out one, which I was like, again, thank God. We didn't have, I think we had the hug. I can't remember what else we did.
Eye
Intimacy,
gazing?
maybe eye gazing as well, which were pretty easy. But I think our hug was shown, but we didn't get any of those embarrassing ones.
Do you think because you're one of the couples that were presented in a more like kind of strong union at that point, that they didn't feel the need to show you or like give you extra tasks for Intimacy Week? I
think so. I think that was a part of it. We actually did, which wasn't shown. It was the most embarrassing thing I've ever done in my life. We did a tantric sex workshop. So I was like, I couldn't deal with it. So we had to go to this like place on Oxford Street, and it was actually really interesting. Like I quite enjoyed it. And it was all about like breathing and having like a sexual connection that wasn't like super physical. And then there was this scene, and I was like lying on this like fur rug on the floor, and then he had to like run his like hands like over my body like this. It was bizarre, but it was all about like connecting through breath work, and like it was hectic. It was intense. And we did that, and that was part of one of our intimacy tasks, but that was never shown. Would have been embarrassing as hell. But there was stuff like that as well that we did, which was fun. But in terms of the tasks, like it was just the hug, which I feel like was pretty easy. It would have been interesting if they tried to give us more challenging things, even with Confession Week, with like all of those stuff, like the phone swapping, that we didn't get any of that. And I do wonder, is that strategic? Because do they not want to create a rift or drama between us, or do they want it with other people?
Totally. Because I think in this intimacy week too, there seemed to be more tension than what I remember seeing in other seasons. Like
For sure.
couples fighting. What was it? Sarah and Tim were fighting. Lucinda and Timothy were fighting.
Yeah.
Obviously, Natalie and Collins left before it even began.
Yeah.
And did you have any issues with Ollie during things like intimacy week that weren't shown? Or
No, we were great during intimacy week. It felt pretty easy for us. And then we didn't. I was shocked when I was hearing all these other tasks. I was like, oh, I wonder why we didn't get those ones. But then I was like, thank God, because I think it's embarrassing because you look at Jack and Tori doing the make out on the bed. I was like, can't
when
deal.
He got up and left straight away.
It was the shoes on the bed for me. I can't. I actually can't with that. And when he got up and left, I was like,
after
he
just
could not
2 minutes.
could not got out of there quicker. Oh. Nah, that is so uncomfortable.
Did they go to Tantric yoga as well? Or they went to some
They
sort
went to
of
something.
class?
No, it was the bondage. They were to tie each other up or something.
Okay.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we saw that. We saw Cassandra and Tristan go painting. We
Yeah.
saw a few other dates.
Yeah.
Normally, I would assume that the producers would organize these dates. But then you and Ollie had your Fiji date. Was that something that would have been organized by producers, or how did that work?
So the Fiji date was actually my producer's idea, and he presented that to Ollie, why don't you do this? And he had the cutest little, because I love pina coladas. I was drinking all of them in Fiji. He had these cute little pineapple glasses that he bought from his own home. And he was use these for the date. He was so cute. It was literally my producer had planned the date for me. He was just the cutest. You would workshop those ideas with your producer. So when I did my date, it was the little golf. I don't remember the little golf moment.
Okay, yeah.
So I came up with that
yeah.
idea with my producer, and I was like, hey, I need to go find this golf stuff. This is my outfit. And then because everything needs to be signed off. So you got to have that discussion and be yep, this is what's going to happen. So a lot of that stuff, all of those dates would have been planned by the producers, all kind of, because the film crew's got to be there. It's a whole thing. You got to get permission from each of these places as well. You can't just go in anywhere and start filming. I feel like producers would have strategically organized all of those little dates.
So then Tim and Sarah,
this is interesting, because then Tim and Sarah, it felt like he was trying to organize dates outside of that. So I felt like he was referring to dates that because basically from how it was with our season, you couldn't hang out with any of the other cast members off camera. So you could only hang out with your partner off camera and you wouldn't get in trouble. If you hung out with other people, snuck around, you'd get in a lot of trouble for doing that. Mm-hmm. So when you'd hang out, you'd go on dates, you would do that. And it sounded like to me he was trying to plan dates not within filming. That's what I was taking out of that, because I don't think she would have been allowed to just say no, she's not going to do a filming setup date, but they would have kind of forced you to do it, right?
Yeah.
So I just don't really think that she would have just been turning those down. It felt to me that it was dates outside of the experiment filming, that kind of thing.
There are obviously some cracks showing between Tim and Sarah. I think one of the big moments as well was the phone swapping. She obviously didn't want to do that last week. What are your thoughts on that?
I am so conflicted with that, because I know I wouldn't love someone going through my phone just because I have embarrassing stuff that I just wouldn't want to explain. So I can understand why. And it's someone you just met. Do you want to kind of be sharing all that stuff in there? But I know at that time, I think around that time, Sarah was messaging Ollie and she wasn't saying the nicest things about Tim.
What?
So
Really?
I'm trying to think if maybe she actually didn't want certain stuff to be shown, because obviously he's going to have his insecurities about why is she not letting me, because at the end of the day, if someone really wants to go through it, let them go through it. If you have nothing to hide, it's hey, well, I'm the first person to be literally, this is my phone, I have nothing to hide, here it is. It did feel like there was something that she didn't want him to see. And then when I think back, I was I remember Ollie mentioning this to me when we were together, and I was oh, that's a bit weird. And then we forgot about it. And then I was oh, it's that couple. And then, she didn't really have the nicest things to say. So then watching it now, it's interesting, because then maybe there was something there. Maybe there's something else that she could have had there that he didn't want to see.
Yeah.
But to me, it feels like there was maybe something that would have made him a bit uncomfy.
Did Sarah and Ollie know each other previously?
No.
Also, this is just kind of a random...
No, so I think she had reached out after listening to his podcast.
Okay.
And a couple of people reach out asking for advice and stuff. He didn't show me the messages, which is interesting, but anyway, we'll leave that.
Interesting.
This is why we need the phone challenge.
Okay, but get us the phone out.
So before we let you go, we've got a quick game called Kiss, Marry, Leave, and I'd love to hear who you would pick from this year's cast.
Oh, this is hard. Okay, Kiss, I reckon Richard.
Love that.
Love him. Just love the vibes. I marry Tim and then leave Jack.
Perfect.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
Can't fault those answers.
Right?
Yeah. One final task, not to completely re-traumatize you, but we
Okay.
do have an honesty box question
Okay.
for you.
Hit me with it. Oh, God.
We can't let you go without doing
I'm
something.
assuming these are like put in.
Not at
You've
all.
strategically chosen exactly what these are going to be.
Please get out your phone and
box,
show
loving
us.
the glitter. What do you think was the biggest factor that led to your breakup with Ollie, and what are you looking for in your next relationship? The biggest factor, it's a hard one to answer. I just feel like we potentially clashed on a lot of things outside of the experiment, and the stuff that we perhaps thought we were on the same page during that time in the real world discovered that we weren't. And that unfortunately doesn't work out in a real world situation. I think when you're in the experiment and you're kind of, going about your day with no control and, you don't have your job, you're just doing what the producers say. It's very different than, having a job, having a house, all of that stuff. So I feel like, clashing in those certain areas and like lifestyle things. And the other part was it. And what are you looking for in your next relationship? Honestly, I don't know yet. I feel like it's so hard because I'm like, I want to date, but then I'm like, no, I don't. I feel like it's even going to be worse because obviously me going into MAFS, I already was having such a bad time with the online dating space and I hated it and don't really want to be doing that again. So now I'm like, what do I do? So I think I just want someone that is, just all about me. Someone that accepts me, what I do, my career, what I want out of life, and just kind of is supportive of that. And just someone that champions me and someone that's going to be by my side through this crazy ride called life.
Would you want them to also be in the public eye?
I've been thinking about this. I'm not opposed to someone in the public eye, but also I would probably want someone that maybe isn't. But also I think it's hard if they're not and they don't understand what you do. And then they're a bit like, they don't really get it. I feel like someone would really have to kind of get it and not really judge. I think that's a hard thing because a lot of people that aren't in the space, they're kind of like, they don't really understand what it's like. So I think, it really depends because I feel like sometimes I just want like a normie person that's just like, doesn't care about any of it. But then sometimes it probably is easier to meet someone that gets it and is already in the space and you don't have to explain everything a million times.
Totally. Maybe he's listening to this podcast.
Maybe.
It's me and you dating app.
Slide in the DMs.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us, Tannie.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm dying to hear what Natalie said to you because you've been keeping it from me.
I think the big question a lot of viewers have had is whether Natalie was ready to go on the show and whether she called it quits too soon. I mean, she only lasted one commitment ceremony and then she called it quits. It was rare to leave after someone else says stay. So that was abrupt exit. But when I spoke to her about why things didn't work out between her and Collins, she believes it was simply because he didn't find her attractive. She said, "I've never felt so unattractive in my entire life. I know that I'm beautiful and I love who I am, and I'm sad that everyone watched me become insecure because this guy doesn't like me." She adds that she was heartbroken to see herself go from a beautiful, bubbly, happy, in her element and loving life person to just soulless behind the eyes.
Oh, that's sad. But do you know what? As a viewer, I guess I didn't ever look at her and think she was insecure or anything like that in the sense of like Collins maybe not being attracted to her. I think it's a hard feeling when you know someone's not attracted to you and you do internalize it a lot. And it can definitely affect your mood and how you go into these situations, right? But I, like, as a fan of the show, I wasn't watching it thinking she came across insecure. I just thought she just didn't want to be there anymore, which is so fair.
Totally. I think another point that a lot of people have made is that her dad died 5 weeks before she filmed her wedding. People have asked whether she was actually ready to go on the show, dealing with grief. I think that's something that only she can really address. What she said was that she feels like the grief overshadowed a lot of the relationship issues she and Collins were actually having during the experiment. She says, "I feel like the grief was sort of an excuse to not say why we didn't have a connection, which was a bit of a shame." She added that she felt like she had a lot of support going into the experiment and she had a great support system. She didn't want someone to heal her of her grief, but she just wanted someone to love her, which I think is very valid.
Yeah, it is really valid. Also, the grief part is interesting too because, you know, two things can exist at the same time. You can be on a show to find love while grieving. Like, you just don't go through life without feeling, you know, a whole bunch of things at once. But I also thought it didn't play a huge factor until the very end, which I guess is the part she's just seen. But even on the honeymoon and stuff, I didn't think like, oh, this girl is really grieving. It adds context towards the commitment ceremony and all that kind of stuff. But I can see, and like you said, she's the only one that can speak about how she was feeling in that moment. And Collins also has his experience and how he felt, and both those experiences can essentially exist at the same time too.
Totally. The full interview with Natalie is live now on Yahoo Lifestyle, but thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Behind the Edit.
And if you like this episode, make sure to leave us a review, but only if you say nice things, please. Follow us on socials, and all the links will be in the show notes.
And we'll see you in the next episode.
Behind the Edit is brought to you by Yahoo Australia, hosted by Lachlan, Guertin and Tahlia Pritchard, produced by Caitie Browne, social production by Alexa Tubertini. Yahoo Australia would like to acknowledge the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation, the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast was recorded, and pay our respects to elders past and present.